He was born an outcast, mocked, exiled, forgotten. But within a few short decades, he would command an empire feared across Africa and respected across the world. This is the story of Shaka Zulu, a boy with nothing who built everything, a king who rewrote the art of war, and a brother betrayed, not by enemies on the battlefield, but by his own blood. Shaka was born around 1787. His father was Senzang Ahona, a minor chief of the small Zulu clan. His mother was Nandi, a woman from the neighboring Langeni people. But their relationship violated tribal customs. Nandi became pregnant before the traditional marriage ceremonies were complete. In Zulu society, that meant shame, deep, lasting shame. When Shaka was born, whispers followed him everywhere. The illegitimate child, the bastard prince. By the time he was 6 years old, he and his mother were cast out, forced to wander from village to village, living in exile, living with constant rejection. A young boy, watching other children play while he stood on the outside, hearing the cruel laughter, feeling the sting of every turn back, every whispered insult. Shaka grew up hungry, but more importantly, he grew up angry. That anger would fuel everything that came next. As Shaka entered his teenage years, his exceptional abilities began to show. He was tall, strong, and fast. But more than that, he had an intensity that made people uncomfortable, a burning need to prove himself. When he was old enough, he joined the army of the Mtetwa people under their chief Dingiswayo. And there, finally, his fury found its focus. He wasn't just another soldier. He was a fighter who stood out from day one, disciplined when others were lazy, unrelenting when others gave up, innovative when others followed tradition blindly. Dingiswayo noticed. Here was a young man with nothing to lose and everything to prove. A dangerous combination in the best possible way. For several years, Shaka learned the art of war under Dingiswayo's guidance. He studied tactics. He observed weaknesses in traditional fighting methods. And most importantly, he began to envision something greater than what existed. But then fate intervened. In 1816, Shaka's father, Senzanga Kona, died. The small Zulu clan, barely 1,500 people scattered across a few villages, needed a new leader. Traditionally, the succession should have gone to one of Senzanga Kona's legitimate sons, but Dingiswayo had other plans. He saw potential in the outcast prince and used his influence to install Shaka as the new chief of the Zulu. Imagine that moment. The boy who had been mocked and exiled was now returning as a king. But Shaka didn't just want to rule. He wanted to transform everything. This was no longer going to be just another small, scattered tribe eking out an existence. This was the beginning of an empire. Shaka seized his moment with both hands. He took command of a people few respected, and he began to reshape them in his own ruthless image. But first, he had to deal with opposition from within. His half-brother Sigujana had expected to inherit the throne. The challenge was settled quickly and permanently. Sigujana was killed, along with anyone else who questioned Shaka's right to rule. The message was clear. This was a new era, and there would be no looking back. Now comes the part of Shaka's story that would echo through history, his complete transformation of African warfare. Shaka understood one fundamental truth. To survive, the Zulu needed to fight completely differently. Traditional Zulu warriors fought with long-throwing spears called assegais. You'd hurl them at your enemies from a distance, then retreat. It was safe, but not decisive. Battles could drag on for hours with minimal casualties. Shaka saw the fatal flaw. You could only carry so many spears. Once you'd thrown them all, what then? His solution was revolutionary, the Ikawa. a short stabbing spear designed for close combat. The name comes from the sound it made when pulled from an enemy's body. But changing weapons was just the beginning. Shaka forced his men to fight barefoot. Why? Better grip, faster movement, and it toughened them. A warrior who could run barefoot over thorns could outmaneuver any sandaled enemy. He revolutionized their shields too, larger, made from cowhide, designed as weapons in their own right. A Zulu warrior could use his shield to hook an enemy's shield aside, then strike with the ikawa. The training was brutal. Shaka's warriors would march up to 50 miles a day. They learned to move as one unit, to think as one mind, to strike as one weapon. But Shaka's greatest innovation was in tactics, the bullhorn formation. Imagine a massive bull charging at you. The chest, the strongest warriors, would engage the enemy head on. Meanwhile, the horns, two groups of the fastest runners, would sprint around the sides to surround the enemy. Behind them, the loins, a reserve force, would deliver the killing blow. It was beautiful in its simplicity, brutal in its effectiveness, absolutely unstoppable when executed properly. Traditional African warfare was often more ritual than reality. Lots of noise, some casualties, then everyone went home. Shaka changed that forever. His battles were total wars. Complete annihilation or complete victory. No middle ground. The results speak for themselves. In less than a decade, Shaka Zulu absorbed more than 100 tribes. Each victory brought more warriors, more cattle, more land. A kingdom was being born, one battle at a time. By the mid-1820s, Shaka ruled over an empire of nearly 250,000 people. The scattered Zulu clan had become the most powerful force in southern Africa. But power on this scale required more than military might. It demanded a complete reorganization of society. Shaka restructured Zulu life around his military system. Young men were organized into age-based regiments, lived in military barracks, and could only marry with Shaka's permission, usually not until their late 20s. This wasn't just about creating better soldiers, it was about creating absolute loyalty to Shaka personally. He held vast ceremonies that reinforced his divine authority. Thousands of warriors performing synchronized war dances, their shields and spears glinting in the sun, while Shaka commanded from his throne, draped in leopard skins and crane feathers. But absolute power came at an absolute cost. Shaka's justice was swift and brutal. Accusation of witchcraft could mean death. Cowardice in battle meant death. His word was literally law, and that law was enforced without mercy. Then came 1827 and the event that would begin Shaka's downfall, the death of his mother, Nandi. Nandi wasn't just his mother. She was his closest advisor, his emotional anchor, the one person who had stood by him through exile and triumph. Her death shattered something inside him. Grief consumed Shaka completely. He ordered mourning rituals so extreme they bordered on madness. Thousands were executed for not mourning deeply enough. No crops could be planted for a year. Pregnant women and their husbands were killed because new life was incompatible with proper grief. Fields went unplanted, families starved. The very empire Shaka had built began to crack under the weight of his overwhelming grief. For the first time in his reign, his own people began to whisper against him. The same man who had built an empire was becoming a danger to its very survival. By 1828, the whispers had grown louder. Shaka's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic and paranoid. He saw threats everywhere, in dreams, in omens, in the behavior of birds. His half-brothers, Dingain and Mlangana, watched all of this with growing concern. They had been loyal supporters during Shaka's rise, but now they faced a terrible choice. watch their brother destroy everything he had built or act to save it. The decision wasn't made lightly. These men had grown up in Shaka's shadow, had benefited from his conquests, had risen to positions of power within his system, but they also saw what was happening to their people. The final straw came when Shaka announced plans for another military campaign, this one against distant tribes to the north. His advisors tried to counsel patience. The army needed time to recover from recent battles. The kingdom needed time to heal from the year of extreme mourning. Shaka's response was typical. He accused his advisors of cowardice and threatened them with death. That night, Dingain and Mlangana made their choice. They approached Mbopa, one of Shaka's most trusted bodyguards, a man who had grown disgusted with his master's excesses. Together, they hatched their plan. It was decided Shaka had to die. On September 22nd, 1828, the deed was done. Shaka was standing in his kraal, his royal compound, discussing the upcoming military campaign when his half-brothers approached. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final speech. Dingain, Mlangana, and Mbopa simply surrounded Shaka and struck. The king who had conquered nations, who had revolutionized warfare, who had built an empire from nothing, never saw it coming. As Shaka lay dying, he supposedly said to his assassins, "Are you stabbing me? Kings of the earth? You will come to an end through killing one another." Whether those were his actual words or not, they proved prophetic. The empire builder had been destroyed by his own blood, and the Zulu Kingdom would never again reach the heights it had achieved under his rule. Shaka was gone, but the kingdom he built lived on. Dingain took the throne and tried to restore stability, but he lacked his half-brother's genius for both war and statecraft. The Zulu military system remained largely intact. The discipline, the tactics, the warrior culture, all of Shaka's innovations survived his death, and they would soon be tested against the most powerful empire on earth. In the 1870s, the British Empire was expanding aggressively into southern Africa. They had already conquered the Xhosa people and were eyeing Zulu territory with its rich lands and strategic position. The British believed this would be a simple campaign. After all, what could primitive African warriors with spears do against modern rifles, artillery, and disciplined European troops? They were about to learn the hard way that Shaka's legacy was far from dead. On January 22nd, 1879, at a place called Isandlwana, 20,000 Zulu warriors faced off against 1,800 British and colonial troops equipped with the latest military technology. The British were confident. They had modern rifles, artillery pieces, and what they believed was superior tactics. But they had underestimated their enemy completely. The Zulu attacked using Shaka's bullhorn formation, refined and perfected over 50 years of warfare. The British found themselves surrounded, cut off from their supply lines, and fighting for their lives against warriors who showed no fear of death. When the dust settled, over 1,300 British and colonial troops lay dead. Only a handful escaped to tell the tale. An entire British army had been wiped out by warriors armed primarily with spears and shields. The news sent shockwaves around the world. The mighty British Empire, which had conquered India and dominated the seas, had been humiliated by African warriors. Of course, the victory wouldn't last. The British returned with overwhelming numbers and firepower. At the Battle of Ulundi later that year, modern artillery and coordinated rifle fire finally broke the Zulu military system. The Zulu Kingdom was conquered, divided, and eventually absorbed into the British Empire. But something had been proven at Isandlwana. Shaka's innovations could challenge even the greatest military powers of the modern world. Shaka Zulu's story is one of the most remarkable in African history. He rose from exile and shame to become one of the continent's greatest military innovators. He united dozens of tribes into a single powerful nation. He created a military system so effective that it could challenge the British Empire itself. But his story also shows us the price of absolute power. The same ruthlessness that built an empire ultimately threatened to destroy it. The same intensity that created brilliant innovations also led to tyrannical excesses. Even in death, Shaka's shadow loomed large enough to reshape the history of southern Africa. His military innovations influenced warfare across the continent. His political systems provided a model for African resistance to European colonization. But his story leaves us with fundamental questions that echo through history. Was Shaka Zulu a visionary leader who united his people against external threats? Or was he a brutal dictator whose methods were as destructive as they were effective? Was he the genius Africa needed to face the challenges of the modern world? Or was he a product of his time whose legacy is too complicated to celebrate? Maybe the answer is that he was both. A man of contradictions in an age that demanded extreme measures for survival. What we know for certain is this: Shaka Zulu changed the course of African history forever, and his story of a boy with nothing who built everything continues to inspire and challenge us today. The outcast became a king. The exile became an empire builder. And the legend lives on. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Africa's most complex historical figures, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What aspect of Shaka's story resonates most with you? History isn't just about what happened. It's about the lessons we carry forward into our own time.